I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this. This is weird. Do guys ejaculate in a swimming pool? Okay. Hopefully I'm not gonna get cancelled because of this.
Mr. Tatenda and his 10 weird questions. In 3, 2, 1, act.
Hello everyone, welcome to this channel and welcome to another episode of 10 Weird Questions Asked to Scientists. My name is Tatenda Mushunje. I'm Zimbabwean and I'm a lecturer at Asia Pacific International University. Let's get into it. Can women get pregnant from semen in a swimming pool? Now this is weird. Do guys ejaculate in a swimming pool? This is a weird one, but it's a really interesting one. Really interesting question. So what do we know about sperm? Sperm, really good swimmers, right? But they're really good swimmers in the vagina. Swimming pool water has chlorine, and I don't think sperm will be able to survive the chlorine in the water. That will probably just kill them. And I'm not sure that sperm are good swimmers outside of the vagina where they're supposed to swim. So I'm gonna take a hard guess and say no, it is safe for women and men to continue swimming together in the same pool. Nothing's gonna happen to you. Although interestingly, there's an article that I read earlier on that said in Indonesia there's a lady who apparently told people that you could become pregnant if you swim with a man in a swimming pool, and she said that if some men have what she called good sperm, whatever that means. So but anyway, she later on apologized for that, for the misinformation. So yes, it is safe to swim in a pool with men and vice versa. Why do people not get offspring when they mate with other animals? Okay. So in terms of genetics, each species is what we call like a chromosome number. So for example, human beings, we've got 23 pairs of chromosomes. Other animals have got different pairs of chromosomes. So essentially, when you mate, the chromosome come together, and eventually the offspring needs to have an even set of chromosomes. So I'm going to use an example to help you illustrate why this might not work. In genetics, we talk about what's called the donkey and the horse. Those two can mate and they produce what we call a mule, which is infertile. Essentially because the chromosome number of a donkey and a horse, they're different. When they come together, the mule has an uneven number of chromosomes. So the mule is not able to make sex cells that are viable. So a mule is infertile. If you extend this to human beings and other animals, right, with different species, different chromosome numbers, so the likelihood of getting a viable young or even a fertile young is already reduced, right? I mean, even in just between human and humans, we do have some cases where because of genetic problems, the zygote is maybe missing a chromosome. We call that a monosomy, and usually those type of pregnancies, they're not viable. So it has to do with the genetics and the structure of the chromosomes. If they're not compatible, you cannot get a viable young. Yeah. So it is a good thing that we don't cross our borders and start mating with other animals or other species. Can men become women? Okay, now this, I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this. I think most of us read the news, and in the West, for example, the definition of a woman has now been changed. If you ask a lot of people what is a woman, a lot of them, they are afraid to define what a woman is. Yeah? So from a biology perspective, what differentiates males and females are what we call the sex chromosomes. So we have the same number of chromosomes, but when it comes to the sex chromosomes, males have XY and females have XX. So the Y chromosome in the males leads to them developing testes, which then produce testosterone, which gives you the male characteristics, right? So from a biological perspective, you cannot change that. A male's XY, female's XX. Now you can have some variation of that. The males with XXY, but again, they have the Y chromosome, and that determines maleness. You got females with XXX, But again, those are just X's, and that that just makes them become. These days, you do have what's called gender reassignment surgeries, and I'm sure you can find like a lot of that on YouTube or other platforms where man, and I feel I must be a woman, I can go to these hospitals, and then they can remove my penis. They give me like a vagina. I'm not sure if it's functional or not, but those things are happening these days. But from a biological perspective, not so much, because it's not only the genetics and the chromosomes, but also the hormones, right? A lot of people that try to change their gender have to take these hormone therapies to have the appearance of the sex that they want to be. And I feel like we should be proud in our differences. We should be proud in the body that you have. Hopefully I'm not gonna get cancelled because of this, but it is what it is. Can we ever stop cancer? And that's a really good question. Cancer is a devastating disease. A lot of people have lost families through cancer. The answer, sadly, I think is maybe not. Why? Because recently there's two researchers, they did a study, and essentially they were asking, what is the greatest cause for cancer? In their studies, they found out that a lot of genetic mutations that lead to cancers are as a result of DNA replication. So when if any of you have done like mitosis, the cell cycle, your DNA doubles before the cell splits, and that doubling event is called DNA replication. Some mistakes do happen. So if like your DNA base is adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, they exist like in different forms. That's what is called the common form that we see like a lot in books, but they also exist in what are called rare forms. So in biology, we learn that adenine always pairs up with thymine, cytosine always pairs up with guanine. But these rare forms of these bases, they've got different characteristics. So for example, a cytosine, instead of pairing up with a guanine, can pair up with a thymine, right? So if that so essentially during replication, if the base is not the right form, you can get like some mutations happening. And essentially if these mutations happen in genes that are important, genes that are involved in cancer, then you could potentially get like malfunctioning protein. So as long as our cells divide, there's always a chance that that division is going to lead to an incorrect mispairing of the bases. Now the cell is really good. There's like a lot of mechanisms that are there to try to reverse these mutations. We call these repair mechanisms, but sadly sometimes they go under these mutations or these problems, they go undetected, and eventually they can lead to that. Now there are some cancers that are usually come about as a result of environmental factors. So like a really good one is lung cancer. There's like a lot of research showing that smoking increases the risk of lung cancer. Actually, there's actually like really good correlation between smoking and lung cancer. So I mean, if it's like an environmental type of cancer, you could limit that essentially by not taking part in the activity, right? So for example, if you stop smoking, you reduce your risk for lung cancer. If you stop drinking, you can reduce your risk for like liver cancer. Even if you stop eating the not the right food or too much processed food, those are not good for us as well. The best that we can do is to come up with better screening methods so that we can dictate the cancers when they're young, before they metastasize, and then we can come up with better therapeutics to help the people that are suffering. But in terms of totally eliminating it, that is a dream. But we gotta do some more work, so that we can achieve that particular dream. Is the human blood any other color apart from red? Good question, because again, like in textbooks, especially biology textbooks, they always give us these two colors of blood. So there's the blood coming from the lungs with oxygen is always shown as red, and then the blood coming from the body going back to the heart and the lungs, we call that deoxygenated blood. That just means less oxygen, is always shown as blue, right? And it can be confusing because sometimes you can actually think that blood comes as red and blue, but essentially blood is predominantly red because blood has this protein called hemoglobin, right? And this hemoglobin is a molecule called heme that binds iron. So iron is like a metal, right? And essentially when oxygen binds to this iron, the iron is oxidized. So actually the color of the blood, that red color, is because of that oxidation reaction. That's why it appears red. Okay, so can it ever be any other color? My guess is no. In humans, it's just going to be red. You can get different shades of the redness. So blood coming from the lungs, with a lot of oxygen going back to the body, is got like a brighter red color. Whereas blood coming from the body going back to the lungs to be purified or to get oxygen is got like different it's got like a darker red color. But it's an interesting question because insects, right, they don't have red blood. They've got different other colored blood. So again, it just depends on that molecule that is binding the oxygen and the metal that is holding on to it. That reaction gives you the color. Now, having said that, so apparently if you go deep inside the ocean, right, where there's not enough light, apparently your blood looks blue. Okay, so again, this whole thing of colors are essentially your perception, right? It has to do with the light that is coming through. It appears blue. Okay, so that's interesting. But for us walking on land, not in the sea, our blood is shades of red, depending on whether it's got oxygen or not enough oxygen. Why does every single cell in your body have DNA? Every single cell in your body needs proteins. Proteins are what does most of the job in cells. So if you think of things like hormones, those are proteins. If you think of things like enzymes that break down, if you eat some food, you're going to break down those molecules, your carbohydrates, your proteins, your fatty, your lipids. Enzymes do that, right? Proteins also act as receptors. So proteins they play a pivotal role in human physiology. Each cell needs to do those reactions, right? So if I get the information from DNA, that means if I don't have DNA, I'm not going to get the proteins, right? So it makes sense for every single cell in your body to have the DNA. Now, there are some cells that don't have DNA. For example, a really good example would be red blood cells that have matured. They do remove the nucleus where you find the DNA. They do remove a lot of the organelles, and essentially this is because red blood cells, their primary aim is to carry oxygen. So they remove all of this other stuff so that they can carry a lot of oxygen. But red blood cells, when they do that, they don't live long. They circulate for about 3 months, and then they're destroyed. So it looks like having DNA is important for the cell to survive, and also for division. If a cell wants to divide, I must have enough DNA to split into these new cells so that they can also go and carry on and live their life. Every cell needs to have DNA because we need proteins for the cell to survive. All right. Why do people die of old age? Actually, I'm not sure if that's a weird question because a lot of people do die from old age, and that's correct. But I think as you also grow older, you expose yourself to more risks of getting injuries. So for example, a lot of old people, they die from hip injuries. They fall down, they can get surgery, but they never fully recover. So I think growing older just makes your body is no longer as resilient and as healthy as it used to be. Your immune cells or your immune system is going down. Your cells are no longer dividing as they used to. So it just leads to it's a combination of all of those things that increases your risk of dying at an old age. Where do moles come from, and are they dangerous? So our skin has some cells called melanocytes. These are essentially what give us melanin. Right, melanin is the pigment that gives us our skin color. So for example, as you can see, I've got a lot of melanin because I'm a darker shade of brown, whereas maybe your friends, they're lighter skinned, they've got less melanin. But anyway, these melanocytes sometimes they overgrow, and when they do that, they can clump together, and essentially that is what a mole is. It's just cells called melanocytes that have overgrown and are clumped together, and then they just appears like a spot on your skin. Now, are they dangerous? So that really depends. Ordinarily, they're not, because this growth we call it benign, meaning it's non-cancerous. So it's really nothing to worry about. But sometimes maybe exposed to some UV or other environmental factors, the growth can become cancerous, and then that could be a problem. It can lead to what we call melanomas. But the majority of moles are non-cancerous and nothing that we should worry about. Where did HIV come from? Okay, so So if you go to CDC, the Center for Disease Control, they've got like a really nice website. And if you look at the history of where HIV comes from, it was traced back to some regions in Central Africa, Cameroon and / Congo. HIV came from what I called primates. So these were like chimpanzees, for example. An HIV virus called the simian virus, that naturally infects these chimpanzees. So the acting hypothesis is this: long back maybe in the 1800s, some guys from these countries, they were hunting for chimpanzees, and maybe they were hunting them to eat. So maybe in the process of eating the chimpanzees with with this particular type of virus, the eating, or maybe the blood of the chimpanzees came in contact with the people. There was that jump of the virus from the chimpanzees to people, and then so when that happened, then began to be propagated in the people through sexual means, right? So that is a working hypothesis as of now, that this is a virus that jumped from chimpanzees to people because of practices that were being done back in the day. I'm sure there's like a lot of other theories out there. I'm sure someone thinks it was made in a lab, possible, but history seems to support the idea that came from Central Africa, jumped from chimpanzees to people via the activities that they were doing. Why do some animals have one gender? This one was tough, right? But it's true, some animals do have just one gender. I think there's a certain type of reptile that has one gender. Why do they have that? Well, I'm gonna say this, life is interesting, life is amazing, there's different facets of life, and maybe this particular animals just prefer to have just one gender. In human beings, we've got males and females. There's a lot of drama, right? Fighting between the different sexes. So maybe these animals were like, no drama. So let's just keep it one sex. So yeah, this is 10 weird questions to scientists, right? Hopefully you guys learn something. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Please like and share. All right. Okay, like and share. And subscribe. Yeah, we need the subscriptions, obviously, right? Okay, have a good day, guys. Bye bye.